Hey, what's going on, good people? I hope that you're having an amazing day. I've got a very special episode of the show for you. It is a solo podcast. We're going to talk about vaccines. We're going to talk about war. We're going to talk about current events. And so we're only going to see a tiny little bit of this on YouTube because YouTube censorship is going to a whole nother level. Big tech has already censored thousands, if not tens of thousands of accounts with millions upon millions of followers, doctors, anything that goes against this narrative is being censored. And the censor coming, I think now, December 9th, is going to be even worse. And so when I was in China, you weren't even allowed to go on YouTube and you weren't allowed to go on Facebook. And so when we're looking at current events and we see this massive censorship in one direction, anything that is anti-vaccine, anything that is anti-democratic, anything that is anything to go against the World Health Organization or the policy of what's going on now is deleted and censored. And so there's a reason why freedom of speech is the number one right in the Constitution in the United States and in Canada and of free people. And if you do not have freedom of speech, you know that you're in war. And, I don't mean to be frightening, but I thought this from the beginning in March. I said, oh, crap, we might be in the middle of World War III because it's not what most people think it is. It's different now. And a lot of my study and a lot of my history, I was very curious about warfare, about why we had human trafficking, why we had starvation, why the world was just so messed up. It didn't make any sense to me. And so I've been studying this stuff for a long time. And so it's very imperative that you get this information. So I highly recommend reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And this is just understanding that in war, communications is number one. And what I'm noticing is that communications are being attacked. And so when you see heavy censorship, you know that's a red flag. And the better information that you have, you can make better decisions for your family. So this isn't to install fear, but it is also to be aware of what's going on. Because if you have more awareness, you can make better choices. And if you're hearing this and you're listening, you are strong, you are capable. Humanity is strong and capable. And I do think that we can get over this. And we just want to make sure that we understand what is going on, because that's going to give us more options. Just like when you learn about health and you realize you shouldn't eat Coke and drink Coke and processed food all day, every day, you can improve your health. So you know what to avoid. And so this video is just a compilation of some things that have been are super relevant for you to know to ideally make a better choice. Do your own research. That's very, very important. Do your own research, question everything, and let's get into this because this is some very interesting stuff that I've compiled for you today. Please share it as far as you can because this is really, really relevant to what's going on. Okay, so optimize for video clip. Let me make sure that I'm doing the right thing here. Right on. Okay, let's start with this. This is The Club of Rome. This is by Dr. John Coleman. I don't know when this is. I haven't looked at the date of this, but this is an old video. I think it's late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And he does a lecture on the Club of 300. And what he says in this lecture is mind-blowing for what's going on now. And that's why so many knew this was coming, because you can find old interviews of many different people talking about what we're experiencing right now. So let's just start with this clip because it's pretty amazing.
And if you don't believe me, get the report of the Club of Rome. You know, when I came out in 1969 with my report on the Club of Rome, nobody had ever heard of it. And people, when they got it, said, "Oh, this guy's paranoid. There's no such organization. It's probably something to do with the Catholic Church." Well, surprise, surprise, 25 years later, last year, the Club of Rome celebrated its anniversary, and Alexander King, its chairman, stated, "The American people henceforth must get used to the idea that they will never, ever again in their lifetime have full employment." What a scandalous thing that our government is fully cooperating with this organization built up by the Royal Institute for International Affairs to destroy the middle class of the United States and to add to the policies of global genocide. And that brings me to the next question. What is the Global 2000? Once again, when I heard about this policy, it was 3 days after it had been accepted by the United States government as its official policy. And And the Global 2000 was a blueprint for mass genocide produced by the Club of Rome. Basically, what the Global 2000 calls for is the destruction of half of the world's population by the year 2050, hence the title 2000. They built a case based on Bertrand Russell and H.G. Wells' findings that the world was going to be overpopulated, would be a terrible place to live in. That was picked up by a fellow called Robert Strange McNamara, and a stranger individual you're not likely to meet in this world. And this fellow had a conference of all the leading bankers about 12 years ago, and he said the biggest menace facing the world today is the American middle class and overpopulation. He linked the two together. And he said, by the year 2050, this is the state of the world. All of these unfed, unwashed people, no jobs. He said, do we want to live in a world like that? So the Global 2000 was a genocidal plan to take care of the people of the United States who don't have any jobs, and like Alexander King said, are never going to get their jobs back, and the masses of people in other nations. That is why we had the sudden appearance of AIDS. When I was in the service, I was told there's a CAB experiment, that's chemical and bacteriological warfare experiment, going on in Sierra Leone, in Africa. That's a remote corner of Africa, West Africa, just above Liberia. If you look at your map, your atlas, and you'll see where it's located. Why Liberia? Extremely hard country to get to. You have to fly from London. That's the only way you can get there. You land on an island, and then you've got to take a ferry across to the mainland. And of course, all people taking the ferry are heavily scrutinized. And I managed to work my way. I was told the Americans were doing the CAB experiment. I managed to work my way to within striking distance of a small mission station. And what I discovered was that the blacks were coming in from the bush to this mission station with broken arms or an ulcer on the leg or something like that. And they were ostensibly being treated there, but they were dead by the evening. What was actually going on was that a laboratory being set up using Lassa fever virus. Now at that time, Lassa fever was one of 4 viruses that could jump the human-animal barrier. And it was a deadly virus. They were trying to create a virus that could be mass-produced and it could be sent out through the World Health Organization to get rid of millions of people in the world. But
you guys hear that one? To be sent out by the World Health Organization to be distributed to the world, a virus. Now, he's not the only one to say this in these old lectures that are really hard to find now because YouTube keeps deleting everything. Over half of the videos I saved from doing the research here is starting in March was 400 hours at least. Half of those videos are gone, so I can't even find those references to show you. But this one is still active. And what I did is anytime you see a video that's worth sharing, download it and then upload it to library or somewhere, because the scary thing is that the censorship is happening. The positive thing is that so many people are waking up. If you look at the likes versus dislikes on all the mainstream news, people are waking up, and it is a solo mission. You have to be strong, do your own research, and make your own decisions. So there is a positive side to this. So, definitely if you enjoy the show, go over to library. Because that's where all this stuff is going to be. And so they're deleting things like crazy. So you just said a virus to be distributed by the World Health Organization. When you look into the World Health Organization, number one, they are funded heavily by China and also Bill Gates. If you look up Bill Gates and his history, it is not a good history. People like, in the mainstream, they think it's philanthropy. Well, he's got a lot of, criminal activity. Went to court for basically trying to monopolize the PC industry. His dad was a eugenicist, and we're going to get into him a little bit later. Corbett Report does a fantastic little mini documentary series on Bill Gates and the Bill Gates family that will give you an alternative view. And so the World Health Organization is unelected. Their main funders are China, and that is what is going on right now. In the States, when Trump was elected, they were saying Russia collusion, Russia collusion. Well, in my research, I didn't find any solid Russia collusion there. Maybe there was. I'm not saying that there isn't, but that my view right now is that I don't think that happened. I'm open if you give me good new information. But what I will say is the evidence that China is attacking the states with the globalists, the evidence for that is everywhere. It is obvious. It is in your face, and it is thick with reasonable, solid evidence. The same with Canada. If you look at Canada, we do exactly what the World Health Organization says, and then we also do what China says, essentially. And if you look at our links, our financial links to China and our policies, it's very clear to see that we take the direction from China, which is not a good thing. And so it looks like we were already bought and paid for. And a lot of independent journalists are coming out with great videos that just go on this. I can link some more. It's a whole separate topic, but you just look at the money trail and the link to China. Well, they sell that out, and that just is what it is. And so, a lot of this stuff with the elections in the states, I think that all of this, Clifford Mahooty, the Zuni elder, was on the podcast, and he said, these people are so evil that they're willing to take down an entire plane to get one person. And what he was referring to was the presidency of Trump. And Clifford told me after, he's like, yeah, all of this is to get Trump out of power. And he goes, I just judge a man on what he does. And he's been trying to drain the swamp. That's from Zuni elder Clifford Mahooty, who worked 40 years in the government as a civil and environmental engineer. And when you look at the policy that Trump is putting forward against China, from my view, that's solid, because I've been to China. They've already got the social credit system. They're very dangerous. They're a communist country, and they are terrifying if you know how they live. And Trump has been opposing that, so I think that's as good. And he's also kicked out the World Health Organization, and he's also ended the Paris Climate Accord. And if you understand that and how it works, you'll know why. And also, I was getting some donuts for my my partner's father, and this guy came from Poland, a communist country, and he talked about imports, exports, and he said this was so important about Trump getting into power for the imports and exports, because that's how they controlled us in Poland, and we were basically under a communist dictatorship, and he fled to Canada because of that. And so if you look at the policies moving forward, there is some questions to be answered about Hunter Biden's laptop. Obviously, that's pretty solid. There's financial ties, and there is solid evidence for that, but the media is deleting anything around that. And so if it goes to court and you figure out that it's all baloney, then it'll be all baloney. However, the substantial evidence for China's collusion in the U.S. political game and what Biden wants to do and his policies with China are troubling to me, because China is dangerous, and in Canada we don't have a choice. And so that just is what it is. My apologies if it offends some people, but the truth, I don't care what it is. If it's left, right, upside down, and it could be two guys playing the same. We could be watching WWF wrestling. Like, one person thinks Biden's the winner, gonna save us. One thinks Trump is going to save us, but behind the scenes, we're going to get to the same outcome if we don't rise up together. We have to stop, no matter what it is, we have to stop ejecting people from our lives and being harmful and doing letting the divide and conquer roll out. I am open to whatever belief you have. It's totally fine. As long as you don't bind me, as long as I don't have to submit to your beliefs, we're cool. And that's how you kind of know if you're on the side of the oppressor, is that you're going to be binding or enforcing on other people. And so I hope that whatever way it goes, that the people rise up and we go beyond governments, because that's what we need to do. But we also need to be aware of the threat. So let's continue with this lecture by Dr. John Coleman, because there's a lot of other stuff to get into.
Virus proved uncontrollable. It killed 6 scientists who were working there. So the orders came from Washington, burn the place to the ground, and that's exactly what they did within a radius of 100 miles. They bottled up some of these viruses they'd been experimenting with and took them back to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. There they began again, but again they escaped and killed 3 more scientists. So they incinerated the whole laboratory, sealed it off and incinerated. The same experiments are now going on in Harvard University right now, but they're not using the Lassa fever virus. That has proved to be too tough for them to handle. Instead, the United States government gave millions of dollars to the United States military chemical and bacteriological warfare establishment at Fort Detrick, and they began experimenting with the AIDS virus. I knew about the AIDS 3 years before the word ever came out in the world, in the United States particularly, because of my field work in Sierra Leone. The British government used their Porton Down CAB facility. It's easier to get into the Bank of England vaults than to get into Porton Down. All the deadliest viruses in the world are being crafted there. In pursuance of the goal of Global 2000 to decimate the world. Shortly after this experiment had finished at Fort Detrick, the World Health Organization started a massive vaccination campaign. They said, for once and for all, we're going to wipe out the scourge of smallpox. They chose Africa and Brazil, launched a massive vaccination campaign. Immediately, AIDS began to appear. Thousands and thousands of people began dying of the strange new virus, which the World Health Organization then said had come from the bite of a green monkey. They forgot to tell you the green monkey's been there for centuries, and he'd been biting people if he ever did for centuries, but no disease of that nature had ever occurred. The World Health Organization deliberately took this virus, which was crafted from a series of animal viruses, including many of these the sheep, which destroys the brain, which is why you find AIDS patients get dementia probably first before any of the other AIDS-related complex diseases appear. And they began vaccinating innocent people on a massive scale, and they began dying like flies. Why Africa and why Brazil? Because those two countries had the biggest black population in the world. And I want to tell the black people of the United States of America, do not trust the Democrat Party. Do not trust government. Do not believe that government is your friend. To them you are dispensable, the same way as we are. Millions of people died. I went through Uganda on an inspection tour, and I saw whole areas decimated where previously there had been small towns and villages. There was not a living soul in sight. And that is going on today. The AIDS epidemic is completely out of hand. It swept the world. It's been swept under the carpet in the United States of America. We were told that this is a disease which is passed by homosexuals. True enough, but that's not the primary cause of it. This is a crafted virus that was spread throughout the world to decimate the population. Coming behind them, and we reported this about 2 years ago in our World in Review News magazine, is the Vibro-19 cholera virus, the deadly killer. You get this cholera in the morning. It is not immediately treated with massive doses of expensive antibiotics. You'll be dead in a day and a half. This epidemic swept India, carrying away millions of people. I don't know if you've heard of it in the press. I doubt it. Behind that is a deadly strain of malaria, and some of our forces in Somalia contracted this disease. A strain of malaria which acts almost like the HIV virus. It attacks the human immune system. And behind that was Black Plague. Now, you've had some experience with Black Plague recently. Experiments were conducted in this area and in California with the Black Plague, distributing them, these plague viruses, to definitive areas by means of enfolded scalar waves using extremely low frequency radiation, which was a warfare technique developed in 1934 by the great Soviet virologist V.A. Gertrude. This is not Black Rogers stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This is today's deadly truth. So some of the Indian reservations were targeted, and all of a sudden they began dying of Black Plague. And then we were told, well, the harvest mouse droppings are responsible. Well, the harvest mouse has been doing his droppings for centuries, but none of them got the Black Plague before that. But what happened immediately following the so-called population control meeting in Cairo? There was a sudden and violent outbreak of Black Plague in India, and it is still going on, and it is not under control. This is all part of the Global 2000 mass genocide plan. I know something about the Black Plague because in my research in the British Museum, I discovered that the Black Venetian nobility had none of their families or members had ever got the Black Plague. Yet the Black Plague, as you know, swept through Europe and killed half of the population of Europe, but none of their families ever got it. So I began seeking for the answers, and I found them in the Cairo Museum. So people said, well, how come, if these things are true, how are they going to protect themselves? They being the Committee of 300, their servants and their families, they have the means of protecting themselves by certain types of herbal compounds mixed with sugar. And they also have, of course, the protection of extremely low frequency radiation, where using the technology developed by the great virologist Goethe, who proved that every living thing on this earth has a vibratory cycle, and he was able to measure the vibratory cycle of various deadly viruses, and by vibrating them, double their cycle, would kill them instantly. So that's one of the defensive weapons that these people have got that will kill the plague if they ever get it. The same technique, of course, will kill cancer cells, but the medical profession run by the Rockefeller family and all the pharmaceutical companies do not want you to know this, because when you go in for the doctor, he's going to write you a prescription for a chemical drug. There's no chemical drug benefit out of extremely low frequency radiation, vibration. No profit to these people. So that's the Global 2000. Decimate the world's population and particularly hit hard the United States middle class.